I caught my wife cheating with her boss and made them confess at their work party. You deserve better than settling for comfortable. They had no idea what was coming. I'm David, 34 male. And my cheating wife just got completely destroyed by the most brilliant revenge I've ever orchestrated in my life. Looking back now, I can see all the signs that should have warned me about Sarah's true nature.
Hey.
But when you're in love, you tend to ignore the red flags, don't you? You make excuses, rationalize behavior, and convince yourself that everything is perfectly normal when it's anything but. Sarah and I met 5 years ago at a tech conference in San Francisco. I was there representing my software company, and she was working the marketing booth for a startup that was trying to break into our industry. The moment I saw her, with her auburn hair catching the conference hall lights and that confident smile as she pitched their product to potential clients, I knew I had to talk to her. Our courtship was like something out of a romantic movie. Weekend trips to Napa Valley, long walks along the beach in Santa Monica, late-night conversations about our dreams and aspirations. Sarah had this infectious energy about her, this ambition that I found incredibly attractive. She talked about climbing the corporate ladder, about making a name for herself in marketing, about the life we could build together. We got married. 2 years later, in a beautiful ceremony at her parents' vineyard, I remember standing at the altar, watching her walk down the aisle in her grandmother's vintage dress, thinking I was the luckiest man alive. Vows were perfect, talking about partnership, loyalty, and growing old together. I believed every single word. But even during our engagement, there were moments that should have given me pause. Like the time we were planning our wedding, and Sarah insisted on inviting her ex-boyfriend Tom to the ceremony. When I questioned it, she became defensive, saying I was being jealous and controlling. She painted it as though maintaining friendships with exes was perfectly normal and healthy, and I was the one with trust issues. Then there was the incident with our wedding photographer. Sarah spent hours on the phone with him, supposedly discussing shots and scheduling, but I noticed she always took these calls in private. When I asked about it, she laughed it off, saying she wanted to surprise me with some special arrangements. Later, I found out from my sister Emma that Sarah had been flirting outrageously with the photographer at our engagement shoot, making comments about how artistic and talented he was while I was getting my suit adjusted. The third red flag came during our honeymoon in Italy. We were having dinner at this romantic restaurant in Tuscany when Sarah's phone kept buzzing. She kept checking it and typing responses, claiming it was work emergencies that couldn't wait. Who has marketing emergencies during their honeymoon in Italy? But I was so caught up in the romance of it all that I chose to believe her explanations rather than trust my instincts. After we returned from our honeymoon, we settled into what I thought was marital bliss. We bought a beautiful house in the suburbs, adopted a golden retriever named Max, and started talking about starting a family. Sarah got promoted to senior marketing manager at her company, which meant longer hours and more business trips. But I supported her career ambitions completely. I should have paid more attention to how those business trips were affecting our relationship. Sarah would come home from these trips energized and glowing, but also distant from me. She'd talk about the conferences she attended, the networking opportunities, the new strategies she was learning, but something felt off about her enthusiasm. It was like she was excited about a secret she couldn't share. Our intimate life started changing around this time too. Sarah became more experimental, suggesting things we'd never tried before, which at first I attributed to her growing confidence in our deepening relationship. But looking back, I realized she was probably practicing techniques she'd learned with someone else. The most telling sign, though, was how Sarah started treating our shared spaces. She became obsessive about privacy, always keeping her phone face down, changing her passwords regularly, and getting annoyed if I happened to glance at her screen while she was texting. She claimed it was because she was handling sensitive work information, but her defensiveness seemed disproportionate to the situation. I remember one evening about 6 months ago when everything started feeling really wrong. Sarah came home from a 3-day business trip to Chicago, and something was different about her. She seemed almost guilty, like she was overcompensating for something. She brought me an expensive watch, made my favorite dinner, and was unusually affectionate, but it felt forced, like she was following a script. That night, as we were lying in bed, Sarah was texting someone. When I asked who it was at 11 o'clock at night, she quickly turned the phone away and said it was her colleague Jessica asking about a client presentation. But I caught a glimpse of the contact name before she turned the screen, and it definitely wasn't Jessica. It was a man's name, though I couldn't make it out clearly in the dark. My best friend Jake, who's been like a brother to me since college, started noticing changes in Sarah's behavior too. Jake's a lawyer, so he's naturally observant and analytical. During a double date with his girlfriend Lisa, Jake pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay at home. He said Sarah seemed distracted and kept checking her phone throughout dinner, which wasn't like her usual social self. I defended Sarah to Jake, explaining about her work stress and upcoming promotion opportunities, but his concern planted a seed of doubt that started growing in my mind. Jake had always been protective of me, especially after my previous relationship ended badly when my ex cheated on me with her personal trainer. He knew how much that betrayal had hurt me, and how hard it was for me to trust again. The irony wasn't lost on me that here I was, potentially facing the same situation again. But Sarah was different from my ex, I told myself. Sarah was ambitious, driven, focused on her career. She wouldn't risk everything we'd built together for a meaningless affair, or so I believed. Looking back at our wedding photos now, I can see something in Sarah's eyes that I missed at the time. There's a calculating quality there, like she was already planning her next move, even as she was promising to love and honor me. But love makes you blind to things you don't want to see. I was desperately in love with the woman I thought Sarah was. Little did I know that in just a few short months, I would discover the truth about who Sarah really was, and I would have to decide whether to be a victim of her deception or the architect of her downfall. The first concrete evidence that something was seriously wrong came on a Tuesday evening in March. I had come home early from work, planning to surprise Sarah with dinner from her favorite Thai restaurant. We'd been having some tension lately, mostly about her increased work hours and weekend business calls. So I thought a romantic gesture might help us reconnect. When I walked into our house, I could hear Sarah's voice coming from our home office. Upstairs, she was speaking in that soft, intimate tone that she used to reserve just for me. The one that made my heart skip a beat when we were dating. But she was talking to someone on the phone. And from the snippets I caught as I climbed the stairs, it definitely wasn't a work conversation. "I miss you too," she was saying. "Last weekend was amazing. I can't stop thinking about how you made me feel." I froze on the staircase, the bag of Thai food growing heavy in my hands. My rational mind tried to come up with innocent explanations. Maybe she was talking to her sister about a spa weekend. Maybe she was discussing a great workout session with her personal trainer. But my gut knew better. I heard the office door creak. And suddenly Sarah was standing at the top of the stairs, looking down at me with wide, startled eyes. She had her phone pressed against her chest, obviously having ended the call abruptly. "David, you're home early," she said, her voice pitched higher than normal. "I was just finishing up a conference call with the West Coast team at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday," I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "That's pretty late for a work call." Sarah's laugh sounded forced. "You know how it is with different time zones. Plus, we're launching that new campaign next month, so everyone's working overtime." She came down the stairs and kissed my cheek, but her body language was tense, almost guilty. I wanted to ask her about what I'd overheard, about who was making her feel amazing, but something held me back. Maybe it was fear of what I might discover, or maybe it was hope that I had misunderstood what I'd heard. "I brought dinner," I said instead, holding up the bag. "Pad Thai from Bangkok Palace." "That's so sweet," Sarah said, but she was still clutching her phone like it contained state secrets. "I actually ate earlier, though. I grabbed something during my meeting, but you go ahead and eat. I need to respond to a few more emails before I can relax." She kissed me again and headed back upstairs, leaving me standing in our foyer with dinner for two and a growing sense that my marriage was built on lies I was only beginning to discover. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention to Sarah's behavior, and the inconsistencies became impossible to ignore. She would leave for work earlier and come home later, always with explanations about urgent projects and demanding clients. Her business trips became more frequent, and she would often extend them by a day or two, claiming the meetings were running longer than expected. But it was the little things that really gave her away. Sarah had always been meticulous about our shared calendar, updating it with her travel schedule so I could plan around her absences. Suddenly, she became vague about her itineraries, saying she would let me know the details once they were finalized. When I asked specific questions about where she was staying or which clients she was meeting, she would get defensive and accuse me of not trusting her. The most telling change was in her appearance and shopping habits. Sarah started buying new lingerie, claiming she needed confidence boosters for important presentations. She began working out more frequently, switching from our usual evening runs together to early morning sessions at an upscale gym across town. When I offered to join her, she said it was better if she went alone because she could focus better on her workout routine. Her grooming habits changed too. Sarah had always been naturally beautiful with minimal effort, but suddenly she was getting her nails done weekly, her hair styled more frequently, and she started wearing perfume to work every day. When I complimented her on looking especially beautiful, she would deflect the praise, saying she was just trying to look more professional as she climbed the corporate ladder. The breaking point came during what should have been a romantic evening. Together, Sarah had been away on another business trip, this time to Denver for a marketing conference. She returned on a Friday evening, and I had planned a special night for us. I made reservations at the restaurant where we had our first official date, bought her favorite flowers, and even arranged for Max to stay at my sister Emma's house so we could have privacy. But when Sarah walked through the door, something was immediately wrong. She seemed distracted, almost annoyed by my romantic preparations. During dinner, she kept checking her phone despite my attempts to engage her in conversation about her trip. When I asked about the conference, her answers were vague and rehearsed, like she was reciting details from a travel brochure rather than sharing personal experiences. "How was the keynote speaker?" I asked, trying to show interest in her work. "Oh, typical corporate stuff," she replied, not looking up from her phone. "Nothing too exciting." "What was the topic?" Sarah paused, and I could see her brain working to come up with an answer. "Digital transformation strategies. Really boring technical stuff that you probably wouldn't find interesting." But I knew Sarah well enough to know that she found marketing strategy fascinating, and she usually loved sharing insights from conferences. Her dismissive attitude was completely out of character. The evening got worse when we returned home. Sarah immediately went to our bedroom and started unpacking her suitcase. But she was being secretive about it, almost protective of her belongings. When I offered to help, she quickly declined, saying she had a system and preferred to do it herself. As she was transferring clothes from her suitcase to the laundry basket, a small piece of paper fell out of one of her jackets. It looked like a receipt or ticket stub. I bent to pick it up, thinking I was being helpful, but Sarah lunged forward and grabbed it before I could see what it was. "Just some old conference materials," she said quickly, crumpling the paper in her hand. "Oh, nothing important." But her reaction was so disproportionate to picking up a simple receipt that I knew it was anything but unimportant. The way she protected that piece of paper, the panic in her eyes when I reached for it, told me everything I needed to know about the state of our marriage that night. As Sarah slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and finally admitted to myself what I had been trying to deny for weeks. My wife was having an affair. The signs were all there, painting a picture I had been too afraid to see clearly. But instead of feeling devastated, I felt something unexpected, a cold, calculating anger. I had been betrayed before, and I had handled it poorly, letting my ex walk all over me while I begged for another chance. This time was going to be different. This time I was going to be smart about it. If Sarah wanted to play games, I was going. To make sure I won, the decision to investigate rather than confront came naturally to me. My background in software engineering had taught me the importance of gathering complete data before drawing conclusions, and my previous experience with infidelity had taught me that emotional reactions rarely lead to favorable outcomes. If Sarah was cheating, I needed proof. And if I was going to end this marriage, I was going to do it on my terms. I started with the most obvious place, her phone. Sarah had always been casual about her device security when we were dating, often asking me to check her messages or answer calls when she was busy. But over the past few months, she had become increasingly protective of her privacy. Her phone now required a fingerprint to unlock. She never left it unattended where I might see the screen. However, Sarah had one weakness. She was a creature of habit. Every morning, she would go for a shower immediately after her alarm went off, leaving her phone charging on her nightstand. On a Saturday morning, when she was particularly exhausted from another business trip, I seized my opportunity. Her phone was locked, but I remembered watching her enter her passcode months ago. When her fingerprint sensor wasn't working properly, Sarah had always used significant dates for her passwords. Her phone code was our wedding anniversary, 09-4. The irony of using our marriage date to hide her affair wasn't lost on me. What I found in her text messages was worse than I had imagined. The affair wasn't a recent development or a moment of weakness. Based on the message history, Sarah had been involved with someone named Marcus for over 6 months. The messages were intimate, detailed, and left no doubt about the physical nature of their relationship. Marcus: can't wait to have you all to myself again next weekend. I've booked the same suite at the Fairmont. Sarah: I told David I have a conference in Portland. We'll have the whole weekend together. The Portland trip. I remembered that weekend clearly because I had offered to drive Sarah to the airport. She insisted on taking an Uber, claiming she didn't want me to deal with airport traffic. Now I knew why. I scrolled through more messages, each one feeling like a knife twist in my chest. Sarah: being with you makes me realize what I've been missing. David is so predictable, so boring compared to you. Marcus: you deserve better than settling for comfortable. You deserve passion. Reading those words, seeing my wife reduce our 5-year relationship to settling for comfortable, ignited something cold and furious inside me, but I forced myself to keep reading, to gather as much information as possible. The messages revealed that Marcus was Sarah's boss at her marketing firm, which explained her enthusiastic attitude about work and her frequent late meetings. They had been carrying on their affair primarily during business trips and late evening client dinners. Sarah had been living a complete double life. She was remarkably good at it. I took screenshots of the most damning conversations, being careful to maintain the timestamps and context. Then I discovered something that made the betrayal even more personal. They had been using our house for their affair when I was out of town on my own business trips. Marcus: your place next Thursday? David will be in Seattle, right? Sarah: perfect. I'll make sure Max is at the doggy daycare so we won't be interrupted. The thought of them in our bed, in our home, with our dogs sent away so they could have privacy, made me physically sick, but it also crystallized my resolve. This wasn't just about ending the marriage anymore. This was about making sure Sarah faced consequences for her choices. I continued my investigation by checking our shared credit card statements, something I had access to as the primary account holder. What I found there provided a detailed roadmap of Sarah's deception. Charges at expensive restaurants on nights when she claimed to be working late. Hotel rooms booked during her supposed business trips to cities where her company had no clients. Purchases at lingerie stores that I had assumed were for my benefit. One particular charge caught my attention: a romantic dinner at La Bernardine in New York. It's one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, on a night when Sarah claimed to be attending a boring conference session. The bill was for 2 people and included a bottle of wine that cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month. I printed out all the suspicious charges and created a timeline of Sarah's affair, cross-referencing the credit card statements with her text messages. The pattern was clear and undeniable. Every business trip had been extended for personal time with Marcus. Every late work meeting had been a romantic dinner. Every weekend conference had been a lover's getaway. But I wasn't satisfied with just digital evidence. I needed to see them together, to confirm with my own eyes what the messages and financial records were telling me. So I started following Sarah. The first time I tailed my own wife, I felt like a character in a spy novel. It was a Wednesday evening when Sarah claimed to have a client dinner that would run late. Instead of going to her usual office, she drove to the Four Seasons Hotel downtown. I watched from my car as she walked into the lobby wearing the black dress I had bought her for our anniversary. The one she said was too fancy for regular date nights with me. 30 minutes later, a man in an expensive suit joined her at the hotel bar. Even from a distance, I could see this was Marcus. He was older than me, probably late 30s, with graying temples and the kind of confident posture that comes from success and authority. I watched them interact, noting the intimate way they leaned toward each other. How Sarah touched his arm when she laughed, how he placed his hand on the small of her back as they walked toward the hotel elevator. I sat in my car for 2 hours, feeling a mixture of rage and vindication. When they finally emerged from the hotel, Sarah's hair was slightly messed and her lipstick had been reapplied. They kissed goodbye in the parking garage before getting into separate cars, and I followed. Sarah home, arriving only minutes after she did. "How was your client dinner?" I asked when she walked through the door. "Exhausting," she replied, not quite meeting my eyes. "Mr. Peterson from the pharmaceutical account is such a demanding client. We barely got through the presentation before he started asking for major revisions." The lie came so easily to her, so naturally, that I realized this was probably just one of hundreds she had told me over the past 6 months. Sarah had become a professional deceiver, and I had been the perfect Mark, trusting, supportive, and completely unsuspecting. But now I knew the truth, and I had the evidence to prove it. The question was what to do with that information. I could confront Sarah immediately, demand explanations, and fight for our marriage. But what was left to fight for? She had made her choice months ago, and she had been lying to my face every single day since then. The woman I had fallen in love with either never existed or had been replaced by someone I didn't recognize. I could file for divorce quietly, present the evidence to my lawyer, and try to move on with my life. That would be the mature, dignified approach. But it would also mean that Sarah would face real consequences for her actions beyond the inconvenience of finding a new place to live. Or I could make sure that her betrayal had the kind of impact that matched the devastation she had caused in my life. Sarah cared about her reputation, her career, her image as a successful, desirable woman. If I was strategic about how I revealed her affair, I could make sure she lost more than just a marriage she clearly didn't value anyway. As I lay in bed that night, listening to Sarah sleep peacefully beside me, completely unaware that her secret life had been discovered, I made my decision. Sarah had chosen to destroy our marriage through calculated deception and betrayal. Now it was my turn to be calculating. She had started this game, but I was going to finish it. The rage that consumed me during those first few days, after discovering Sarah's affair, was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was raw, consuming, and dangerous. I found myself fantasizing about confronting Marcus at his office, about exposing Sarah's lies to everyone who knew us, about destroying their relationship the way they had destroyed my marriage. But revenge driven by pure emotion rarely succeeds, and I couldn't afford to make mistakes. So I channeled that fury into cold, methodical planning. If I was going to make Sarah pay for her betrayal, I needed to be smarter than she was, more strategic, and absolutely ruthless in my execution. The first person I confided in was my best friend, Jake. We met at our usual sports bar on a Thursday evening, and I laid out everything I had discovered. Jake listened without interruption as I showed him the screenshots, the credit card statements, and photos I had taken of Sarah and Marcus together. "David, I'm so sorry," Jake said when I finished. "I know how much you loved her. This has to be devastating." "It is," I admitted. "But I'm not going to handle this the way I handled it with Jessica. I'm not going to be the victim this time." Jake nodded, understanding immediately. He had been there for me during my previous breakup, watching me beg my ex-girlfriend for another chance while she continued seeing her personal trainer behind my back. It had been humiliating and pointless. "What are you thinking?" Jake asked. "I want to destroy them both," I said bluntly. "Not physically, but professionally and socially. I want their affair to cost them everything." Jake leaned back in his chair, his lawyer instincts kicking in. "Okay, but we need to be smart about this. What exactly do you want to achieve?" I had been thinking about this question for days. Sarah cares about three things: her career, her reputation, and her image as a successful, desirable woman. Probably cares about the same things. Plus, he's got a wife and family to consider. Marcus is married? Jake asked, raising an eyebrow. Very married, I confirmed, pulling up the LinkedIn profile I had found. A wife named Rebecca, 2 kids, big house in the suburbs. He's got a lot more to lose than Sarah does. Jake whistled. Low. So you want to expose the affair in a way that maximizes damage to both of them. Exactly. But it has to be public, humiliating, and undeniable. I want everyone who knows them to see exactly what kind of people they really are. We spent the next 2 hours brainstorming strategies. Jake's legal expertise was invaluable in helping me understand what I could and couldn't do without crossing lines that might get me in trouble. I'll help me think through the timing and execution of whatever plan we developed. The key is making them expose themselves, Jake said. You don't want to be the one making accusations that they can deny or minimize. You want to create a situation where their own actions and words damn them. That's when the ideas started forming. Sarah's company was planning their annual holiday party, a big, fancy affair where employees brought their spouses and the company celebrated their achievements for the year. Sarah had been talking about it for weeks, mentioning how important it was for her career that she'd make a good impression. What if we could get them to confess their affair publicly, I suggested. The company party, in front of everyone. Jake's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. Do we make that happen? I smiled, feeling the pieces of my plan starting to come together. We give them exactly what they think they want. The perfect opportunity to be together without hiding.
Oh, burn.
The next few weeks, I refined my strategy with Jake's help. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Sarah and Marcus believed they were being clever, but their affair had made them careless and overconfident. I was going to use that arrogance against them. The first phase involved creating a fake emergency that would require Marcus to be at the company party alone. Through careful social media research, I discovered that Marcus's wife, Rebecca, was active in several charity organizations and had a particularly strong commitment to animal rescue. I created an anonymous email account and sent a message to her favorite animal shelter, claiming to be a large donor who wanted to meet with her privately to discuss a major contribution, but only on the night of Marcus's company party, to make sure the message looked legitimate. I researched recent successful donors to the organization and mimicked their communication style. I even sent a small real donation to the shelter first, using a fake name, so there would be a record of my generosity in their system. Rebecca took the bait completely. She responded enthusiastically to the meeting request and even posted on social media about the exciting opportunity to help fund a new animal rescue facility. Marcus would be going to his company party alone, just as I needed him to. The second phase involved manipulating Sarah's expectations about the evening. I started dropping hints about how tired I was from work, how I wasn't really looking forward to her company party, how I might need to leave early, or even skip it entirely. Sarah was initially frustrated by my apparent lack of enthusiasm, but I could see her mind working, realizing that my absence would give her more freedom to be with Marcus. You don't have to come if you're not feeling up to it, she finally said, trying to sound considerate rather than hopeful. I know these corporate events aren't really your thing. Are you sure? I asked, feigning concern. I don't want you to have to go alone. I'll be fine, Sarah assured me. I'll probably just network a bit and come home early anyway. Perfect. Sarah thought she had convinced me to skip the party, which meant she would be completely unprepared. For what was coming, the third and most crucial phase involved the actual exposure mechanism. I couldn't simply show up at the party and make accusations. That would look like a jealous husband making a scene. And Sarah and Marcus could easily deny everything or claim I was having a breakdown instead. I needed them to confess their affair, publicly, in front of witnesses, in a way that would be undeniable and humiliating. That's where my technical background became invaluable. I purchased a small, high-quality recording device and a microprojector, both designed to be virtually undetectable. My plan was to record Sarah and Marcus together at the party, then project their conversation onto the wall during the company's presentation segment. When everyone would be paying attention to the screen, but I needed more than just a recording of them talking. I needed them to say something that would leave no doubt about their relationship. So I decided to give them the perfect romantic setting to incriminate themselves. I booked a suite at the same hotel where the company party was, being held using a fake name and paying cash. The suite had a balcony that overlooked the party venue, and I planned to use it as my base of operations. More importantly, I arranged for a bottle of expensive champagne to be delivered to Sarah during the party, with a note that appeared to be from Marcus, asking her to meet him in the suite for a private celebration. The note was carefully crafted to sound romantic and urgent. My darling Sarah, I can't wait another moment to hold you. Meet me in suite 1247 at 9 p.m. so we can toast to our future together. Tonight feels like the beginning of our real life. All my love, M. I knew Sarah well enough to know she wouldn't be able to resist the romantic gesture, especially at an event where she was trying to maintain professional appearances. She would go to the suite expecting a private romantic interlude with Marcus. Not knowing that I would be there waiting with cameras rolling, the final element of my plan involved Marcus himself. I needed him to be in that suite, making incriminating statements. So I sent him a text message from Sarah's phone while she was in the shower one morning. Meet me in Hotel Suite 1247 tonight at 9 p.m. I have something important to tell you about. David, it's time to make our choice. Yes. Everything was falling into place perfectly. Sarah and Marcus would both show up at the suite, expecting a romantic rendezvous. Instead, they would find me, and their entire affair would be recorded for posterity. Then, while they were still reeling from being caught, I would play the recording at the party downstairs, exposing their betrayal to their colleagues, friends, and Marcus's boss. But I wasn't finished yet. The public humiliation was just the beginning. I had also been working with Jake to prepare divorce papers that would be served to Sarah immediately after the party, while she was still in shock and surrounded by witnesses to her infidelity. The papers included documentation of her affair, and would ensure that I kept the house, our assets, and my dignity. As the date of the company party approached, I felt a mixture of anticipation and grim satisfaction. Sarah had no idea that her carefully constructed double life was about to come crashing down around her. She continued lying to my face, planning her romantic evening with Marcus, completely unaware that she was walking into a trap of her own, making the night before the party. As I watched Sarah trying on different outfits and discussing which dress would make the best impression, I almost felt sorry for her. She was so confident, so sure of her ability to manipulate and deceive. She couldn't see the reckoning that was coming. But then I remembered the text messages, the lies, the way she had described our marriage as settling for comfortable, and my sympathy evaporated. Sarah had made her choices. Now she was going to live with the consequences. Tomorrow night, at her own company party, in front of everyone who mattered to her career and her reputation, Sarah was going to learn that actions have consequences, and betrayal has a price. The day of Sarah's company party arrived with perfect December weather, crisp, clear, and cold enough to make the hotel's warm lights look especially inviting. I had been awake since dawn, running through my plan one final time, checking every detail, every contingency. Today was the day Sarah's world would collapse. I was determined not to leave anything to chance. Sarah, meanwhile, was in an unusually good mood. She hummed in the shower, took extra time with her makeup, and chose the red dress that she knew made her look stunning. She was preparing for what she thought would be a romantic evening with Marcus, completely unaware that she was actually preparing for her public humiliation. I still feel bad about you missing the party, she said as she applied her lipstick, meeting my eyes in the bathroom mirror. Are you sure you're okay with staying home? The concern in her voice was so convincing that for a moment I almost doubted what I knew to be true. But then I remembered the hotel room charges on our credit card and the intimate text messages, and my resolve hardened. I'm sure, I replied. I've got some code to review anyway, and honestly, I could use the quiet evening. You go have fun, networking. Sarah smiled and kissed my cheek, careful not to smudge her lipstick. I'll try not to be too late. These things usually wind down by 11. I knew better. Sarah was planning to slip away from the party at 9 too. Meet Marcus in the hotel suite I had reserved. She probably thought she'd be back home by midnight, full of stories about boring speeches and awkward small talk. Never imagining that by then her affair would be exposed to everyone who mattered in her professional life. After Sarah left for the party, I put the final pieces of my plan into motion. I drove to the hotel and checked into my reserved suite. Using the fake ID Jake had helped me obtain, the suite was perfect for my purposes. Spacious, elegant, and most importantly, directly above the main ballroom where Sarah's company party was taking place. I spent the next hour setting up my equipment. The recording devices were positioned strategically around the room, invisible to anyone who wasn't looking for them. The microprojector was ready to connect to my laptop, and I had tested the connection to the ballroom's AV system multiple times. Everything was working perfectly. At 8:30, I sent the text message to Marcus from Sarah's phone, confirming their meeting in the suite. Then I positioned myself behind the bedroom door, where I would be hidden when they arrived, but still able to see and hear everything that happened. The waiting was the hardest part. I stood in that darkened bedroom, my heart pounding with anticipation and adrenaline, thinking about how this moment had been months in the making. Every lie Sarah had told me, every fake business trip, every intimate message she had exchanged with Marcus, it had all led to this room, this night, this reckoning. At 8:55, I heard the suite's door open. Sarah's voice carried clearly through the room as she called out, "Marcus, are you here already?" She sounded excited, breathless with anticipation. I could hear her heels clicking on the marble floor as she walked through the suite, probably looking for her lover, expecting to find rose petals and champagne, ready for a romantic celebration of their affair. "The champagne is beautiful," she called out, and I could hear her opening the bottle I had arranged to be delivered. "This is such a perfect surprise. I can't believe we're finally doing this." 5 minutes later, Marcus arrived. I heard the door open again, and Sarah's delighted gasp as she rushed to greet him. "I got your message," Marcus said, his voice deep and confident. "What did you want to tell me about David?" There was a pause, and I could imagine Sarah's confusion as she realized they had received different messages. "I didn't send you a message about David," Sarah said slowly. "He sent me the note about toasting our future together." I heard Marcus's sharp intake of breath as they both began to realize something was wrong. But before they could figure out what was happening, I stepped out of the bedroom and into the main room where they were standing. "What?" "Surprise," I said quietly. The look on their faces was everything I had hoped for, and more. Sarah went completely white, her mouth falling open in shock. Marcus immediately stepped back from her, his executive composure cracking as he understood the trap they had walked into. "David," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible, "what are you doing here?" "I'm here for the same reason you are," I replied, pulling out my phone to show them the recording app that had been running since they entered the room. "I'm here to celebrate your future together." Marcus found his voice first. "Now wait just a minute. This isn't what it looks like," I laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor, really, because what it looks like is my wife having an affair with her married boss, using our house for their rendezvous, and lying to my face for the past 6 months. Please, tell me what I'm missing." Sarah's shock was transforming into defensive anger. "You've been spying on me? You've been following me?" "I've been paying attention," I corrected. "Something I should have been doing months ago when you started. Coming home from your fake business trips, smelling like his cologne." "David, please," Sarah said, moving toward me with her hands outstretched. "Let me explain. This isn't. We didn't mean for this to happen." "Oh, but you did mean for it to happen," I said, stepping back from her reach. "You meant to book hotel rooms with my credit card. You meant to send our dog away so you could use our bed. You meant to lie to me every single day while you were carrying on with him." Marcus was looking around the room, probably trying to figure out if there was a way to salvage the situation. "David, I understand you're upset, but we can handle this like adults. There's no need for anyone else to get involved." "Adults?" I repeated. "Adults don't sneak around behind their spouse's back. Adults don't use company credit cards to fund their affairs. Adults don't destroy families for their own gratification." "How did you know about the company credit cards?" Marcus asked, his face going pale. I smiled coldly. "I know everything, Marcus. I know about Rebecca's charity meeting tonight, The one I arranged so she wouldn't be here. I know about your weekend trips to San Francisco that never showed up. On Sarah's company calendar. I know about the suite you booked at the Fairmont where you told my wife she deserved better than settling for comfortable. Sarah sank onto the couch, the full scope of my knowledge finally hitting her. You read our messages? Every single one, I confirmed. Including the ones where you planned to tell me you wanted a divorce right after the holidays. How thoughtful. Of you to wait until after Christmas to destroy our marriage? The room fell silent except for the sound of Sarah's quiet crying. Marcus was staring at his shoes, probably calculating how much this affair was going to cost him when Rebecca found out about it. So what happens now? Marcus asked finally. I checked my watch. It was 9:25, which meant the company. Party downstairs was just moving into the presentation portion of the evening. Perfect timing. Now, I said, we're going to take a little walk downstairs. You're both going to stand in front of Sarah's colleagues and explain to them exactly what kind of people they work with. Absolutely not, Marcus said immediately. I won't do that. Yes, you will, I replied calmly. Because if you don't, I'll be sending the recording of this conversation to your wife, your boss, and the company's HR department. I'll also be sharing the documentation of how you've been using company resources to fund your affair. Something tells me the board of directors won't appreciate learning that their marketing director has been embezzling to pay for hotel rooms. Marcus's professional confidence finally cracked completely. You can't prove embezzlement. Company credit card used for personal expenses without authorization? I said hotel rooms that weren't legitimate business expenses. I don't need to prove embezzlement in court, Marcus. I just need to create enough doubt to end your career. Sarah looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. David, please. I know I hurt you, but destroying our careers won't fix anything. You're right. I agreed, it won't fix our marriage. But it will make sure you both understand that betrayal has consequences. You thought you were so clever, so careful. You thought you could destroy my life and walk away without any real consequences. Well, you were wrong. Door, expecting them to follow. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Either you come downstairs with me and confess your affair to the room, or I expose it myself with the recording and the financial evidence. Your choice. Marcus and Sarah exchanged a look of pure desperation. They were trapped, and they knew it. Everything they had worked for, everything they cared about, was about to be destroyed by their own choices. Please, Sarah whispered one more time. There has to be another way. I looked at my wife, this woman I had loved completely, who had chosen to betray everything we had built together for a few months of excitement with her boss. I felt no sympathy, no regret. No second thoughts about what I was about to do. You made your choice 6 months ago, I told her. Now it's time to live with the consequences. The walk from the hotel suite to the elevator felt like a funeral procession. Sarah walked between Marcus and me, her earlier confidence completely shattered, while Marcus kept checking his phone as if he was expecting a miraculous rescue that wasn't coming. The elevator ride to the ballroom level was conducted in complete silence. It's broken only by Sarah's occasional sniffles and the mechanical hum of the hotel's ventilation system. As we approached the ballroom entrance, I could hear the sounds of the party in full swing, laughter, conversation, and the clink of wine glasses as Sarah's colleagues enjoyed what they thought was just another corporate celebration. The irony wasn't lost on me that this was supposed to be Sarah's night to shine, her opportunity to network and impress the senior partners who would determine her future promotions. David, please, Sarah tried one last time as we paused outside. The ballroom doors. Think about what you're doing. Once we go in there, there's no taking this back. I looked at her, really looked at her, for what I knew would be the last time I would see her as my wife. She was still beautiful, still the woman who had walked down the aisle toward me 3 years ago, promising to love and honor me. But that woman was a lie, a performance she had maintained just long enough to secure her position in my life, before she started looking for something better. You're absolutely right, I said. Once we go in there, there's no taking this back. Just like there was no taking back the first time you slept with Marcus. Just like there was no taking back every lie you've told me for the past 6 months. Some choices are permanent, Sarah. You taught me that. Marcus made one final attempt to negotiate. What if we both resign from the company? What if Sarah files for divorce tomorrow and we disappear from your life completely? You'd have what you want without the public humiliation. I shook my head. What I want is for everyone to see who you really are. You've both been living double lives, pretending to be people you're not. It's time for the performance to end. I pushed open the ballroom doors, and we stepped inside. The scene was exactly what I had expected, an elegant corporate party with about 200 people in attendance. Sarah's colleagues were clustered around cocktail tables. The senior partners were holding court near the bar, and a presentation screen was set up at the front of the room, where someone was adjusting a microphone for the evening speeches. Several people immediately noticed our entrance, particularly because Sarah and Marcus arriving together with me trailing behind was not the dynamic anyone would have expected. Sarah's assistant Jennifer waved at us from across the room, and I could see Marcus's secretary looking confused about why her boss looked so pale and distressed. "Act natural," I murmured to both of them as we moved deeper into the room. Wouldn't want anyone to think something was wrong. Sarah tried to compose herself, forcing a smile and nodding at people she recognized. But anyone paying close attention could see that something was off. Her hands were shaking, her smile was strained. She kept glancing nervously at Marcus and me. We made our way toward the front of the room, where the evening's presentations were about to begin. The company's CEO, Robert Henderson, was adjusting his notes at the podium while the AV technician finished setting up the projection system. Perfect timing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Robert announced into the microphone, "if I could have your attention, we're ready to begin this evening's presentations." The room gradually quieted as people turned their attention to the front. Had been planning for weeks, the culmination of all my careful preparation and strategic thinking. I pulled out my phone and opened the app that would connect to the hotel's presentation system. During my preparation, I had discovered that the hotel used a standard wireless projection setup that could be accessed by any device on their network. It was a security flaw that most people would never think to exploit, but it was exactly what I needed for my purposes. "Our first presentation tonight," Robert continued, "will be from our marketing department, highlighting some of their outstanding achievements this year." Marcus was supposed to be giving that presentation. Could see him standing frozen beside me, realizing that his professional reputation was about to be destroyed in front of his boss, his colleagues, and his subordinates. "Actually," I said, raising my voice just enough to be heard clearly, "I think there's been a change to the program." Robert looked confused, and several people in the audience turned to see who was speaking. I walked toward the front of the room, with confidence, leaving Sarah and Marcus standing together like deer caught in headlights. "Excuse me, sir," Robert said politely, "but I don't believe you're scheduled to speak tonight." "You're absolutely right," I replied, reaching the front of the room and turning to face the audience. "I'm David Thompson, and I'm here with my wife, Sarah, and her boss Marcus to share something important with all of you." I could see the confusion spreading through the room as people tried to understand what was happening. Sarah worked with most of these people every day, and they knew her. As a dedicated professional, Marcus was well respected as a department head. No one could have imagined what they were about to learn. For the past 6 months, I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. Sarah and Marcus have been conducting an affair. They've used company resources to fund their relationship, led to their spouses and colleagues, and violated the trust that both of you placed in them. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Gasps echoed through the room. People started talking to each other in shocked whispers, and all eyes turned to Sarah and Marcus, who were standing in the middle of the room, looking like they wanted to disappear into the floor. "That's a serious accusation," Robert said, his voice tight with concern. "Do you have any proof of these claims?" I smiled and activated the connection to the projection system. "I'm glad you asked." The large screen behind me came to life, displaying the text messages between Sarah and Marcus that I had screenshot weeks earlier. The intimate exchanges, the planning of their secret meetings, the disparaging comments about me. Everything was there in high-definition detail for everyone to read. "Sarah, being with you makes me realize what I've been missing. David is so predictable, so boring compared to you. Marcus, you deserve better than settling for comfortable. You deserve passion. Sarah, I can't wait to be free of this marriage. David suspects nothing. The silence in the room was deafening as 200 people read the evidence of the affair that had been conducted right under their noses. I watched faces in the audience transition from confusion to shock to disgust as they realized what they were seeing. Marcus finally found his voice. "This is a private matter," he said loudly. "This man has no right to air personal business at a company function." "Personal business?" I repeated, switching to the next screen, which showed the credit card statements documenting their hotel expenses. "You mean the personal business you conducted with company credit cards? The personal business you conducted during company time? The personal business that involved lying to your wife, your boss, and every person in this room?" Robert's face had gone completely white as he realized the scope of the scandal that was unfolding at his company party. "Marcus, is this true?" Before Marcus could answer, I played the audio recording from the hotel suite just an hour earlier. Marcus's voice filled the ballroom as he talked about not meaning for the affair to happen, followed by Sarah's tearful admission that they had been planning to ask for divorces after the holidays. The entire room erupted in conversation as people processed what they were hearing. I could see Sarah's female colleagues looking at her with expressions of betrayal and disappointment. These were women who had trusted her, confided in her, included her in their professional and personal circles. Now they were learning that she had been living a complete lie. Marcus's subordinates were staring at him with a mixture of shock and anger. These were people who had worked late nights and weekends to meet his demands, who had respected him as a leader and mentor. Now they were discovering that he had been using his position of authority to conduct an affair with a married woman. "I think we've heard enough," Robert said, his voice shaking with anger. "Marcus, Sarah, you need to leave immediately. We'll be conducting a full investigation of these allegations, and you can expect to hear from HR and our legal department." I wasn't finished yet. I had one more revelation that would ensure this night lived in company legend forever. "There's just one more thing," I said, switching to the final screen. "Marcus, your wife Rebecca is at the children's animal shelter right now, meeting with a donor who promised to fund their new facility. Except that donor doesn't exist. I created that meeting to make sure she wouldn't be here tonight." The color drained from Marcus's face as he realized the full extent of my manipulation. "You manipulated my wife?" "I gave her an opportunity to do something she cares about," I corrected. "Just like you gave yourself an opportunity to do something you cared about. The difference is that Rebecca was helping abandon animals while you were destroying families." Sarah was crying openly now, her career and reputation in ruins in front of everyone who mattered to her professional life. Several of her female colleagues had turned their backs on her, literally and figuratively rejecting her presence among them. "How could you do this to us?" Sarah sobbed, looking directly at me. "We worked together for years. I loved you." I looked at my wife, this woman who had shared my bed while planning her escape, who had smiled at me over breakfast while texting her lover, who had promised to honor our marriage while systematically destroying it. "You loved the security I provided," I said calmly. "You loved having someone to pay the bills while you figured out if you could find something better. But you never loved me enough to be honest with me, and you certainly never loved me enough to end our marriage before you started another relationship." I turned to address the room one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for disrupting your evening, but I felt you deserved to know the character of the people you work with every day. Sarah and Marcus have shown you exactly who they are. I suggest you believe them." With that, I walked toward the ballroom exit, leaving Sarah and Marcus to face the consequences of their choices alone. Behind me, I could hear the buzz of conversation as 200 people processed the most dramatic corporate scandal they had ever witnessed firsthand. As I reached the door, I heard Sarah call my name one last time, her voice desperate and pleading. I didn't turn around. There was nothing left to say. Sarah had made her choice 6 months ago when she decided to start an affair instead of ending our marriage. Now, she was living with the consequences of that choice, just as I had been living with the consequences of trusting her. The revenge was complete. Sarah's career was over, Marcus's position was untenable, and their affair had been exposed in the most public, humiliating way possible. They had both lost everything they cared about: their reputations, their jobs, their standing in the community, and their relationships with their colleagues. but more than that. They had learned that betrayal has a price, and that price is sometimes higher than anyone imagines when they first decide to cheat. Walking out of that ballroom was one of the most liberating moments of my life. Behind me, I could hear the chaos I had created, voices raised in shock, the buzz of scandal spreading through the crowd, and Sarah's desperate attempts to explain herself to colleagues who no longer trusted her. But I felt nothing but cold satisfaction as I stepped into the hotel lobby and finally allowed myself to breathe. My phone was buzzing with text messages before I even reached my car. Jake had been waiting for my signal, and the moment I sent him a simple, "It's done," he put the final phase of our plan into motion. While Sarah was still reeling from her public humiliation, divorce papers were being prepared for immediate service. By tomorrow morning, she would officially know that our marriage was over and that I had documentation of her affair that would ensure. I kept everything we had built together. The drive home was surreal. For 6 months, I had been living in a state of constant tension, knowing my marriage was a lie, but not knowing how to address it. Now, for the first time in half a year, I felt like I could actually relax. The truth was out, the pretense was over, and I was finally free to start rebuilding my life. When I got home, Max greeted me at the door with his usual enthusiasm, completely unaware that his family had just imploded. I sat on the floor and let him climb all over me, thinking about how much simpler life would be now. No more wondering where Sarah really was when she claimed to be working late. No more analyzing her behavior for signs of deception. No more lying awake at night wondering if I was imagining things or if my wife really was betraying me. Around midnight, my phone rang. It was Sarah. "David, please," she said when I answered. "We need to talk. I know you're angry, but what you did tonight was cruel and vindictive. You've destroyed my career, my friendships, everything I worked for." I let her talk for a moment, listening to her try to make me feel guilty for exposing her affair. It was fascinating in a way, to hear her attempt to reframe the situation as though I was the villain in this story. "Are you finished?" I asked. When she paused for breath, "This isn't how adults handle marital problems," she continued. "You should have come to me, should have given us a chance to work things out before you decided to humiliate me publicly. Adults handle marital problems by talking to their spouse, not by sleeping with their boss," I replied. "Adults handle marital problems by going to counseling, not by planning to ask for a divorce after the holidays. Adults handle marital problems by being honest about their feelings, not by lying every single day while conducting an affair." "I was going to tell you," Sarah said, her voice getting smaller. "I was trying to figure out how to end things with you without hurting you," I laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "Without hurting me? Sarah, you spent 6 months lying to my face, using our house for your affair, and telling your lover that I was boring and predictable. You described our marriage as settling for comfortable. How exactly were you planning to avoid hurting me?" There was a long pause before Sarah spoke again. "What happens now?" "Now you figure out how to rebuild your life without me," I said. "You'll be receiving divorce papers tomorrow morning. I suggest you get a good lawyer, because I have documentation of your affair that will ensure this divorce goes very much in my favor." "David, please," she said one more time. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. I'll end things with Marcus. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." "You can't unmake the choice you made 6 months ago," I told her. "You can't undo the lies, the betrayal, the destruction of our marriage. You made your decision when you chose to have an affair instead of ending our relationship honestly. Now you get to live with the consequences." I hung up the phone and turned it off. There was nothing more to say. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, paperwork, and the practical details of ending a 5-year relationship. Jake proved to be invaluable, handling the legal aspects of the divorce while I focused on protecting my assets and planning my future. The story of Sarah's public exposure had spread far beyond her company. In our connected world, someone had recorded part of my presentation and posted it online, where it quickly went viral as a story of justified revenge. Sarah and Marcus became cautionary tales, examples of how workplace affairs can destroy careers and families. Marcus was terminated from his position within a week of the party. The company's investigation revealed that he had indeed used corporate resources for personal expenses related to his affair. And his wife Rebecca filed for divorce after learning about his betrayal from the viral video. His professional reputation was so damaged that he struggled to find another position in marketing. Sarah fared somewhat better professionally, but only because she resigned from her position before she could be fired. However, in the tight-knit marketing community, word of her affair and the dramatic way it was exposed made it difficult for her to find new employment. The colleagues who had once respected and trusted her now saw her as someone who couldn't be relied upon to maintain professional boundaries. More importantly for Sarah, the public nature of her humiliation had destroyed her carefully cultivated image as a successful, desirable woman. The viral video of her crying and begging for forgiveness at her own company party became a symbol of how infidelity can backfire spectacularly. She had traded her marriage for what she thought would be a better life with Marcus, only to lose everything she valued about herself in the process. As for me, the months following the divorce were a period of rediscovery and growth. I had been so focused on planning Sarah's downfall that I hadn't given much thought to what I wanted my life to look like afterward. But freed from the constant stress of living with a cheating spouse, I found myself more energetic, more creative, and more optimistic than I had been in years. I threw myself into my work with renewed passion, developing new software solutions that earned recognition from my company and several industry awards. Without the distraction of a failing marriage, I was able to focus completely on my professional goals and achieve success I'd never imagined possible. My personal life improved dramatically as well. I reconnected with friends I had neglected. During my marriage, started new hobbies, and began dating again when I felt ready. The experience with Sarah had taught me valuable lessons about red flags and relationship dynamics that made me a better judge of character and a more confident partner. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected email from Marcus. He had apparently been struggling with unemployment and the breakdown of his marriage, and he wanted to apologize for his role in destroying my relationship with Sarah. "I know you have no reason to forgive me," he wrote, "but I wanted you to. Know that I realize now how wrong I was. I destroyed my family and yours for a relationship that wasn't worth any of the pain it caused. Sarah and I lasted exactly 3 weeks after your wife filed for divorce. Turns out that when you remove the excitement of sneaking around, there wasn't much substance to our connection." I read his email with detachment. Marcus's regret was irrelevant to me now. The revenge I had planned had achieved everything I wanted. Sarah and Marcus had both lost their careers, their reputations, and their relationship with each other. More importantly, I had regained my self-respect and my belief in my own worth. I didn't respond to Marcus's email. There was nothing to say. He had made his choice, just as Sarah had made hers, and they were both living with the consequences. My focus was on the future. It's not on relitigating the past. A year after the company party that destroyed Sarah's career, I was promoted to senior software engineer at my company. I had also started dating Emma, a teacher I met through my sister, who was everything Sarah pretended to be: honest, loyal, genuinely interested in building a life together, rather than just enjoying the excitement of a secret affair. Looking back on the entire experience, I realized that Sarah's betrayal had actually been a gift, even though it didn't feel like it at the time. Her affair had freed me from a marriage to someone who didn't value me, someone who was willing to lie and cheat rather than address problems honestly. Her deception had taught me to trust my instincts and to demand better treatment from the people in my life. Most importantly, the revenge I had orchestrated had proven to me that I didn't have to be a victim of other people's choices. When someone betrays you, you have options. You can choose to be destroyed by their actions, or you can choose to respond strategically and ensure that they face consequences for their behavior. Sarah had thought she was so clever, so careful in conducting her affair. She had underestimated my intelligence, my determination, and my willingness to fight for my own dignity. Her arrogance and overconfidence had been her downfall, and the public humiliation she suffered was entirely of her own making. The last I heard about Sarah, she was working as a waitress at a restaurant outside of town. still trying to rebuild her life and her reputation. Marcus had moved to another state, reportedly working in sales for a small company that didn't require references from his previous employer. Their affair, which had seemed so passionate and important when it was secret, had cost them everything they valued about their lives. As for me, I learned that the best revenge isn't just about making someone pay for their betrayal. The best revenge is living well, achieving success, and building relationships based on honesty and mutual respect. Sarah's affair had ended our marriage, but my response to her affair had given me the foundation for a much better life. To anyone watching this video who has experienced betrayal in their own relationships, my story proves that you don't have to accept being treated poorly. You don't have to be a victim of someone else's selfishness and deception. You have the power to respond strategically, to protect yourself, and to ensure that people face consequences for their actions, Sarah thought. She could destroy our marriage without facing any real consequences for her choices. She was wrong. And if someone in your life is treating you with similar disrespect, they're wrong too. You deserve better, and you have the power to demand it. After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind about relationships, trust, and how we handle betrayal in our own lives. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories that remind us of our shared humanity and the complex emotions we all navigate. We are all human, trying to make sense of love, loyalty, and the choices we make when our relationships are tested. If you enjoyed this story and found something meaningful in David's journey from betrayal to empowerment, feel free to share it with others who might benefit from hearing about how someone turned their worst moment into their greatest victory. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon that explore the depths of human experience and the resilience of the human spirit.